This series while I go live this time. First sign of it fucking slipping up, we're gonna have to get out of the contender series. Welcome back, Barbecue Pit. UFC Vegas 41 coming up. Paulo Costa, Marvin Vettori. Another card that is very main event heavy. Doesn't really have. I think if they're gonna go with Rick Glenn, I think it is Rick Glenn versus Grant Dawson as a co-main event. I don't think that fight gets a lot of hype. The entire card is kind of lackluster after the main event, but we're going to jump it off. Nicolau Negramunu going against Ike Villanueva. Villanueva is 18-12, 1-3 in the UFC. He has a knockout win over Vinicius Moraes, and then knockout loss to Chase Sherman, Jordan Wright, and then most recently Marcin Prashito. 15 of his 18 wins via knockout. He has finished 11 out of 12 of his opponents. Or no, he was finished in 11 out of 12 of his losses. He's a former Fury FC light heavyweight champion. And he'll come into this fight with a 3-inch height and a 3-inch height advantage, but a 5-inch reach disadvantage against Nicolette, who is 10-1, 1-1 in the UFC, a split decision win over Aleska Kamur, and then a unanimous decision loss to Surbeg Surfarov. He's got 6 wins by knockout, 3 wins by submission. His opponent's records leading into the UFC, his 2 UFC fights, one a split decision. That means one of the judges at least seen the fight go the other way, and then a decision loss. Before that, before he got into the UFC, his 4 opponents leading up to the UFC were 12-41, 7-5, 2-15, and 10-13. So this guy got into the UFC undefeated. Granted, he was 9-0 at the time that he got into the UFC. But before, his last 4 fights of his career were all against guys with shitty records. Best record out of those 4 fights were 7-5. That's not good in the first 12 fights. And this guy really isn't UFC level material, I don't think. And he's got good grappling, he's got decent grappling. He's definitely going to have a grappling advantage over Ike Villanueva. But Ike Villanueva's got power in his strikes, and he's a pretty good kickboxer. He gasses out a little bit into the later rounds, but I don't think that's going to be an issue with Nicolette. I think he's going to finish him first or second round, so I'm going to go Ike Villanueva there. Dwight Grant, not Grant Dawson, but Dwight Grant will be taking on Francisco Trinaldo. Grant is 11-3. Holy shit. Grant is 11-3, 7 wins by knockout, 4-2 by decision, 3-2 in the UFC. He lost his debut to Zach Ottawa by split decision. He then beat Carlo Pedisoli Jr. By TKO, and then won a decision over Alan Joban and Stefan Sulik in his last fight. His last fight was in April of 2021. He's a purple belt in jiu-jitsu. He'll be going up against a brown belt in jiu-jitsu, Francisco Trinaldo. Trinaldo is 26-8, never been knocked out in his career. 12 wins by decision, 9 wins by knockout. 2-1 since 2020. He's got wins over John McDessie and Ja Herbert. The unanimous decision loss to Muslim Sokolov in June. That was his most recent fight. He's been in the UFC since 2012. And he'll come into this fight with a 5-inch height and an 8-inch reach disadvantage against a striker in Grant Dawson. Excuse me. I know he's a dominant grappler. He's obviously levels better than Grant in grappling. But Grant Dawson, he's got knockout power, and he's got an 8-inch reach advantage over Trinaldo. I know Trinaldo's a tough guy. It's hard to finish him. But I think Dwight Grant has got what it takes to get it done and knock him out in the early rounds, same as Ike Villanueva, in my opinion. Third fight, Alex Caceres, Sing Woo Choi. Caceres' brother, Jose Caceres, is also fighting this weekend, but that's an ex-MMA. I forget who he's fighting, but 2 brothers fighting in the same. This one's in Vegas, of course, Vegas 41, and then ex-MMA will be in Miami. So unable to corner each other. Caceres is 18-12-1. He's on a 4-fight winning streak over Steven Peterson, Chase Hooper, Austin Springer, and Kevin Kroom. He's got 7 submission losses. He's got 9 decision wins. He's got a kung fu style of fighting. Great striker. Kind of struggles with good jiu-jitsu. So there's that. Choi, he's a striker. He's got a 4-inch height, 1-inch reach advantage over Caceres, he's got a 10-3, 3-fight winning streak at the moment. His most recent fight was a TKO win over Julian Erosa in June. He's 3-2 in the UFC. His first 2 fights in the UFC, he lost against Movsar Evloev and Gavin Tucker. He's got 6 knockout wins in his career. Knockout power, great ground game. I think that he's got what it takes to outlast Caceres. Caceres is great at winning decisions. He's great at point fighting, kung fu, kind of karate style. Fighters are always really good at point fighting, sticking the leg kicks, sticking the jab out there, and just outstriking numbers-wise their opponent. But when it comes to power striking, Sung Woo Choi is going to definitely have an advantage there. And I'd like his advantage in the grappling game as well. So I'm going to go Sung Woo Choi in that fight. Jessica Rose Clark versus Jocelyn Edwards. Another great fight. I'm kind of upset with my pick here because I really like Jessica Rose Clark. Jessica Rose Clark 10-6-1. Won her last fight via TKO against Sarah Alpar in September of 2020. So it's been over a year now since Jessica Rose Clark's been in there. Never been finished in her career. 3-2 in the UFC. Her only losses to Penny Kizad and Jessica I. Edwards is going to come into this fight with a 4-inch height and a 4-inch reach advantage over Jessica Rose Clark. 1-1 in the UFC. He's got a decision win over Wu Yanan, and then a unanimous decision loss to Carol Rosa, who's an up-and-coming prospect in that division. She's 10-3, 5 knockout wins, 3 submission wins. Only 1 submission loss. That was in her second pro fight. Other than that, hasn't been knocked out. You know, big size advantage. Most recent fight was Carol Rosa, whereas Jessica Rose Clark, with most recent fight was over a year ago, and it was against Sarah Alpar. Big step up in competition for Jessica Rose Clark, in my opinion, going against a striker with big size advantage over her. Not good. I like Jocelyn Edwards. I hate to say that about Jessica Rose Clark because she is very tough, always exciting to watch. Probably going to be a pretty bloody fight. But Jocelyn Edwards, I don't think Jessica Rose Clark's striking is going to be able to get through that big of a reach disadvantage. So I'm going to go Jocelyn Edwards there. Grant Dawson, Rick Glenn, like we were talking about, co-main event, I believe, unless for some reason they switch up the card or I think Jonathan Martinez was waiting on an opponent. I think, today, tomorrow is kind of going to be one of those last days to get on a short notice replacement. And if you get a short notice replacement, it's likely going to be one of these contender guys, contender series guys, or just a young guy in general. So I don't think that has more star power than Rick Glenn versus Grant Dawson. Dawson comes into this fight brown belt in jiu-jitsu, 17-1. Only loss was a knockout to Hugh Pulley in 2016. 5-0 in the UFC. He's on an 8-fight winning streak at the moment. His UFC wins include Julian Erosa, Derek Minner, Nad Naramandi, and Leonardo Santos. He will be fighting Rick Glenn, veteran of the sport, 22-6-1. Also a brown belt in jiu-jitsu, 13 knockout wins in his career. Never been knocked out. His last fight was a knockout win over Joaquim Silva back in June. He's 4-3 in the UFC. His other wins include Dennis Bermudez, Gavin Tucker, and Felipe Nova. Very evenly matched guys here. I think evenly matched on the ground. This is going to be a striking bout. And if I had to give an edge to one or the other in the striking, I'm going to go with Grant Dawson. I think Grant Dawson also has youth on his side. I can't remember off the top of my head, but I'm pretty positive Grant Dawson is the younger of the two guys. I'll check for us right now. Excuse me. Grant Dawson, 27. Rick Glenn, 32. So, yes, very slightly younger, 5 years. Similar in size. I think Dawson has a little bit of a reach advantage, but Glenn's going to come in with a height advantage. Dawson training out of Glory MMA and Fitness out of Missouri, while Rick Glenn trains out of Absolute MMA and Fitness out of Des Moines, Iowa. So both guys coming out of kind of the boonies, not any big camps. I think this fight really comes down to who's going to be a better striker, and I'm going to give that to Grant Dawson. I'm leaning slightly on Dawson. I think it's a very, very close fight, though. Matchmakers got it matched up pretty well with that fight. I wouldn't have chose that to be a co-main event of any card on the UFC. I think maybe, starting a kicking off a main card maybe, or even headlining a prelim card. But co-main event, that's tough for that fight. I think they probably had another idea for the co-main event and maybe fell through or something happened with that fight. But it is kind of sucky that has to be the co-main event. I think it's going to be an exciting fight, but for guys that just look, they're going to be like, oh, Paulo Costa, Marvin Vettori. We know those guys. Those guys just fought out of China. They're like, who's the co-main event? And they look, and they, if you don't really follow the UFC, you probably won't know. Those names don't jump off the paper. You know what I mean? So I like it. I like Grant Dawson in that fight. Paulo Costa, Marvin Vettori, the headline card. Both of these guys' last fight was against Israel Adesanya. Costa being knocked out by Adesanya in September of 2020, over a year off for him. Vettori lost UFC 263 to Adesanya. That was back in June, so a lot more recent. Vettori is 17-5-1. Since Costa's last fight, Vettori has beat Jack Hermanson and Kevin Holland, and then lost to Adesanya since Costa fought. So he's fought 3 times since his last fight. Vettori's never been finished. He's got 9 wins by submission. Costa comes in 11 knockout wins. Johnny Hendricks, Uriah Hall, and Yoel Romero with 3 fights leading him up to the title fight with Adesanya. I think this is going to be a classic striker versus grappler type of fight. I think, if Adesanya was able to stop the takedowns, I don't understand why Paulo Costa wouldn't. Paulo Costa trains with a lot of great wrestlers. He trains with that guy, Eric Albekrian, or whatever, however you say his name. They got great wrestlers over there, Henry Cejudo. They got a bunch of guys that are really good at grappling. So I have to assume his takedown defense is going to be pretty good. And he's a black belt in jiu-jitsu. So if he gets down there, I know I always say good top pressure wrestling is always a kryptonite to good jiu-jitsu. But, if he's down there and he's able to throw up his rubber guard or triangle chokes or anything like that, it's going to be a tough time for Vettori to keep that top pressure. Add that on top of, I think it's going to be very tough for Marvin Vettori to get a takedown against somebody as big as Paulo Costa. He was able to take down Kevin Holland. Kevin Holland's kind of a skinny 185 guy, could fight welterweight. Paulo Costa is a guy that could fight light heavyweight. Shit, if he fucking put on enough muscle, I know he'd be small for heavyweight, but he could fight heavyweight, But I don't think it's going to be that easy for Vettori to take him down, which means that if he is trying again and again and again to take him down, he's probably going to get getting tired, which leaves him susceptible to be knocked out by Paulo Costa. So I think Vettori's got a great shot, and he is the favorite, -130. But I don't really enjoy his fighting style. I think that his fights against Hermanson and Holland were extremely boring, and that's saying something. 'Cause Kevin Holland's never in a boring fight. If he's any type of offensive at all, he's not in a boring fight. He's a showman. You know what I mean? So to say a Kevin Holland fight was boring, that says a lot about Marvin Vettori. So just based off of my preferences, I'm going to go Paulo Costa. Paulo Costa also has a lot to prove here. He made the excuse of I was drinking this and that when I fought Adesanya, so he's coming back. He's got that kind of stigma on him where he needs to come in focused. He needs to come in 100%. And if he does that, he's got a really good shot. So I'm going to go Paulo Costa. Rest of the card plays out, and I don't know the order of this, so this order is probably going to change a lot. But Mason Jones was supposed to be fighting Alan Patrick. David Onamla is going to step in, making his UFC debut to replace Alan Patrick. Junyun Park is going to be taking on Gregory Rodriguez. Tabitha Rushi will be taking on Maria de Oliveira. Jamie Pickett versus Lorena Staropoli. That was supposed to happen a few weeks ago. It got moved to this week. Jai Herbert will be fighting Kama Worthy. Jeffrey Molina versus Daniel Lacerda. Livia Renato Souza will be taking on Randa Marcos early in the card. I like Randa Marcos. Hope that she can take off in her career. She's got a really good story behind her career, and she needs to start getting back in the win column in order to take off and get to a belt or get to anywhere that you would call successful in that division. She needs to start winning and getting consistent wins against the top of her division. And this is step one against Souza. If I had to pick a fight to watch on the prelims, Pickett versus Staropoli is a good fight. I think Rusi versus Oliveira is a good fight. If I had to pick one, though, it's going to be Jeffrey Molina versus Daniel Lacerda. Jeffrey Molina is a guy that we've been anticipating coming back for a while. I know he had a fight booked a few weeks, maybe a month ago, where I don't know if it was him that pulled out or his opponent pulled out and they got it moved, or I'm not sure what happened. I can't remember. It was a while ago. But very well anticipated. You know, he showed out on the Contender Series. So I got high hopes for Jeffrey Molina, and I think that's going to be our sleeper fight for the prelims. Next Tuesday, let's see. Let me just get a check on it, guys. Next Tuesday will be back-to-back. Oh, shit. Back-to-back pay-per-view cards. Next Tuesday, we'll be previewing 267, Blachowicz versus Glover Teixeira, which will also have Petr Yan versus Corey Sandhagen and Li Jingliang versus Khamzat Chimaev. And then following that, November 6th card will be UFC 268, Kamaru Usman versus Colby Covington, which will also have Rose Namajunas and Wale Zhang, and also Justin Gaethje and Michael Chandler. So dude, if we just look, I bet you I could pick out a co-main event that they could have just had it happen 1 week earlier. Let's go to the 267. 1 week earlier, you could have been a co-main event, fucking Islam Makhachev, Dan Hooker, not even on the poster. Not even on the fucking poster. Put them motherfuckers on a co-main event 1 week earlier. That card is slamming. The card is fucking Paulo Costa and Marvin Vettori, and then the co-main event's going to be Islam Makhachev, Dan Hooker. That card is fucking awesome, dude. It's mad. Dude, main event of the prelims, Amanda Ribas versus Vernita Jordanova. That's a great fight. I'd rather take that as a co-main event. Dude, there's mad fights on here that 1 week earlier. You can't tell me that there's that many people that would throw a fit about moving their fight 1 week earlier. Like, I get it. Like, all right, maybe you don't get Dan Hooker, Islam Makhachev. Move on to Alexander Volkov, Marcin Tybura. Good co-main event. Magomed Ankalaev versus Volkan Ozdemir. Good co-main event. I mean, there's like 4 or 5 fights on the card 2 weeks from now that could be co-main events on this card. Just move them up a week, man. I don't get it. We might see it happen. You never know. I mean, we've seen crazier things happen. We've seen day notices. We've seen people fight 7 days apart now. I mean, there's crazy things that happen in the UFC. I doubt it. I think that's going to be our co-main event, Grant Dawson, Rick Glenn, but we will see. Come back next Tuesday for the previews. Until then, stay barbecued. You know what it is. Fuck with your boy.